Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started. Our window of opportunity is open for great things to happen. Our superintendent of public instruction opened us up this morning with those words, and it made me think. Policy is very opportunistic. Policy making is about persistence. Policy making is about being in the right place at the right time with the right people, led by the right champions. Policy making is about collaboration and building coalitions. My name is Khadija Alam Javed. I am the Director of Government Relations for Advancement Project, California. Let's talk about education policy. Raise your hands. When I say education policy, how many of you think about K through 12 education? Raise your hand. How many of you think about early care and education? How many of you think about both? Good, good. As far as I can remember, education has been spoken about in different silos. Birth through 3, 4-year-olds, K through 12, higher education. I won't go into higher education, but it's been spoken about in silos. With your help and through the water cooler, we are trying to change that narrative. No more silos, one aligned system that works for all children and their parents who need the system to be comprehensive enough to work for them. I think this year we're very lucky to have a governor and his team who are thinking beyond silos. We heard from Ben Chida today, who frankly spoke about silos that failed him, the education system that failed him, unfortunately. We also heard from Chris Perry yesterday, who spoke about systems approach to education. We'll hear from Giannina, who's going to talk to us, who tells us to think about whole child, whole systems. We heard from our SPI, Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Thurmond, who spoke about student success and closing the opportunity gap, about this being the perfect time for our issues. We have a speaker whose Blue Ribbon Commission's work is the foundation, will be the foundation of the Early Care and Education Master Plan. So we are very lucky that our discussions with our decision makers are no longer about whether investments in early care and education and K through 12 systems should happen, but rather, what do we need to do to make them happen? Yes, we talk about our issues has changed, but it doesn't mean our job is done. Just because we have champions across the street does not mean that we're done with our job. In fact, quite the opposite. Our champions in the building need champions like you outside. We need to give our champions in the Capitol the ammunition to do the right thing, to push them a little further. So when they have to choose between two very important issues and priorities, we as advocates make it politically viable for them to pick the right issues for our kids. Not just whomever has the most power, but what's the right issue for our kids. Trust me, there are more powerful and louder voices out there than ours, but guess what? It is our time. It is our opportunity. And we are here to take it. And there's no way in the world we should let this window of opportunity just pass us by. We need to show our elected officials there is public backing on our issues. We need to show them that there's support. We need to show them that we have strength in numbers. So what does the education landscape look like next year? We're going to hear from our panelists today, but for me, I see it being very bright. There will be many opportunities to work together, There will be collaboration between the early care and education system and K-12 systems like never before, especially in light of the master plan for early care and education. Also, you as advocates and as voters will have two opportunities to make investments in education next year. One in March of 2020 to vote for a preschool to higher education school facilities bond, which is historic in itself. Folks, for the first time in California's history, there will be a school facilities bond in front of the voters that will allow school districts to use that bond funds for preschool facilities. Preschool through university facilities bond is a perfect example of stronger systems alignment. It's just the beginning, guys. 2, voters will also have an opportunity to vote on an initiative or initiatives to drastically increase the much-needed funding for our schools. We have so much to look forward to, you guys, at least for the next 3 years and hopefully more, with this governor and the leadership across the street, and with all of you. We also have so much to be held accountable for. Policy making is hard, but the right implementation of policy is even harder of a task. On that happy note, I would like to introduce our next panel, which will discuss education policy outlook for 2020 and what that shared agenda would look like. The panel will be facilitated by my dear friend Arron of SD Bechtel Junior Foundation, so please help me welcome the moderator and our panelists.
Okay, thank you, Khadija. One more time, but for Giannina, Manuel, Edgar, Celia, let me hear you give a warm welcome. Because we're asking them to do all the work today, but for this panel to really be as dynamic as we want it to be, I'm going to need your help. And so, you know that joke that you play on people when they're just about to take a bite and you tell them something funny and then they spit it out? So I'm going to see if I can do that to a room full of people all at the same time. If you're an early education advocate, let me hear you say woo. Give me something. Woo! All right, see that?
Fists in the air too so we can actually see. All right, here we go.
K-12 advocates, let me hear it from you. Woo! All right. Parent advocates. Not bad, not bad. Any higher ed? Okay. That's further down the pipeline. It's hard to hear them from here. Okay, now I'm going to do one more thing here. If you were an advocate for children this past year, can I ask you to do this? Would you stand up, please? You can still eat if you want to.
Do you want to?
If you were an advocate for children for last year, okay, I'm not going to stand up because I'm doing this exercise. If you were an advocate for children the last 3 years, stay standing. Everyone else sit down. Just keep your eyes on your colleagues. If you've been an advocate for 5 years, stay standing. Okay. 10 years. How about 15 years?
I'm getting there.
What happens when we go to 20 years?
That I gotta say.
Take a look at this from. Do you want me to go faster? 25 years. Who's been an advocate in here for 25 years? 30 years. Who's going to win this race? 40 years. Let's say 40. There's our winner. When we talk about the historical context for this work and what 2020 means, it's a story of all of us, all of you, those in this room and not. So please take a moment and just thank that advocate next to you for waking up this morning and be ready to fight for kids. Give me some thank yous.
Thank you.
I wonder if, we've heard the last 2 days just how much is going to happen next year. The question is, are we worthy to the challenge of what's to come? Are we together smart enough for it? Are we strategic enough? Are we going to give up enough to allow a few priorities to succeed when we all might not be able to exceed on our issues. The goal of this panel is to help you see a little bit into the future. What can you expect next year? But I'm hoping part of